Rise up, the Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. The crew is back, and now it's time to rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. Rise up, rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. The crew is back, and now it's time to rise up. The Dukes are back, and now it's time to rise up. Rise up.
We're back to the Days on Fire podcast, episode 21. What a great season. First season as a podcast, and both teams are eliminated in the second round of the Atlantic 10 tournaments, respectively. Yeah. Alec, what do you want to say? Start it off.
I don't want to say repeat that someone overlooked the LaSalle Explorers. I won't say that.
Okay, that's good, because I'm pretty sure the person who was overlooking them specifically said that the players and coach should not do that. If I'm remembering that person who definitely said something like that, and said it didn't matter whether it was Rhode Island or LaSalle, because Duquesne's team is much more talented and should easily win those games. That person's very upset with the performance by Duquesne and the effort. Really, I'm questioning it all tonight.
Well, good thing that didn't come from either of us on this podcast.
I mean,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's great.
Because that would be so foolish. I mean, a Duquesne basketball podcast saying something like that would be embarrassing, wouldn't it be?
It really would. Speaking of, Fordham fans are going to be our most listened to audience tonight, because I've already gotten several tweets from the same fan base who told me to get a life for being upset that we lost that game, are now just tweeting at us about games that don't affect them in any way. So
you really riled them up.
I did, by calling their team a bunch of fake ass punks. Which they are, and I stand by that. If you flop,
we're big Explorer fans now.
100%. Fran's my second favorite coach in the Atlantic 10. He might be my favorite. Who knows? Blame to go everywhere tonight.
Yeah. Where do you think? Where do you start, or where does your mind go immediately? We're recording minutes after the final.
Based off of social media reaction, and I mean, I'm a huge Dan Brott believer, so this is tough, but we did not make any adjustments whatsoever this game. We kept pounding our head into the brick wall that was there. I texted you with 15 minutes left in the second half. Joe Reese is atrocious tonight. Take him off the floor. Our best runs in this game was with him off of the floor, with the exception of the time where we decided to try and do Trey Williams and RJ Gunn at the same time, which just made our defense a mess on the interior. And when Brickus and, mainly Brickus, just
Brantley
and Brickus were able to just weave their way through for easy layups. I will say this, didn't impact the final result, but the refs were calling fouls on Rozier and Brewer for just normal defense.
They were too quick. They were too quick on the whistle, which there was probably going to be a foul at the end of trying to trap them full court, but they were calling ghost fouls.
At the end of the game, absolutely. I was just talking about the one in particular where Rozier got a block. The guy was just flailing a shot.
Yeah.
And then right after that, their guards were flailing their limbs into our guards, and they called fouls. And then there was legitimate contact on our end where we're driving. I loved watching the slow-mo replay of Day Grant getting hacked, the ball going off of him, and they can't go back and call a foul even though they see it right there. So it's now LaSalle ball. That was a great moment that I just really loved in the accepting of the loss. It's great.
There was now that you mentioned Brewer and Rozier, now I know what you were trying to say. And with Brewer, some of those were soft foul calls, but some of them were like they were they were good at drawing contact. LaSalle, Brantley, and Brickus, and in a few occasions there were a few where it was like the Rozier that you're talking about that definitely wasn't a foul.
Yeah, and
But
I'm going to keep deflecting from actually focusing the blame on the players for a little bit longer. The foul on RJ Gunn where he supposedly took down the LaSalle guy. The LaSalle guy stuck his ass into him, initiated contact, and caused RJ Gunn to trip. And that happened in the VCU St. Louis game, and the foul was called on the guy who stuck his ass out at the player in that game. So either the refs, I don't
that
know.
happens all the time in basketball. Like you stick it out and like see if he runs into you. So I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
You're deflecting clearly.
I admitted that. Alec, you don't have to point it out again. This is atrocious. I said in the last pod that if we lose, we should just say this sucks. Season's over. Podcast over. And then just end it there. I mean,
In terms of actual basketball,
we chucked up a bunch of wild shots. We didn't try to drive until the end of the game when it was too late, and when we did, it worked, which is just another annoying thing because you and I have been saying it all season that they just need to drive to the basket. We have athletes who can drive to the basket, and I don't know why we didn't do it more often.
yeah, we had now some of these shots were obviously when the game was over, but 10 of 33 from 33
Well,
shot attempts from 3.
the second half numbers was like 7 for 30, I think, from the field or something like that. I saw
Yeah, so we shot 35% from the field, 24 for 68, and then from 3, 10 to 33, 30%. But 33 shots from 3 is like an outlandish number. So I would say probably what, 7, maybe 7, or that's probably a lot. Maybe 5 of those threes are when the game was over. But either way, I said it in the reaction to Fordham. This team's over reliance on the 3-point shot was ultimately
an over reliance
showed
on turning the ball over if we don't turn the ball
that
over.
as well. And that's how Duquesne had a good start in the first half. And the commentator, that was one of the good things the commentator said.
Yeah,
was that in the first
they were brutal tonight too. But that's
good. It was Collinsworth's son called the game.
Yeah, I don't know. They were both awful.
I mean, I don't like him in football, let alone like calling basketball. So
they both very low energy, like just
yeah. It was a horrible broadcast. But the one positive from their broadcast was whoever the color commentator was said that Duquesne was really forcing turnovers in the first half and haven't really done that in the second half. And that's when the tide sort of shifted. We weren't able to force those turnovers and generate points for our offense. And then we shot really horribly in the half court offense. And admittedly in the first half, especially, we just weren't hitting shots. Like there were a lot of good looks. RJ Gunn in particular, he comes out first shot of the game, wide open, top of the arc, misses. He has a wide open corner 3 off of a day pass or maybe a Brewer pick and roll. Either way, or no, that was either way. Someone missed in the corner. I forget. It was I think RJ Gunn and Day both had that shot.
Day missed one in the corner.
Just some of these were just we just didn't hit shots that we normally hit, and that's kind of important in tournament play basketball, I would argue.
Yeah. I will say this, since we were talking pick and roll action, there were quite a few good rolls that we just couldn't pass the ball to the rolling big. And
yes.
it happened towards the end of the game as well. Brewer to, I think it was Rotroff, where he just passed it behind him. And it was just like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how open you are. If you can't get it to him in stride,
I agree with that. I saw that specific. I wrote it down in my notes in the first half. Trey Clark ran a few pick and rolls, and he wasn't. It was just like a lack of concentration. The ball got tipped twice on his entry pass on the roll guy. Um, just those little things that you don't execute, they add up to turnovers. They add up to just being out of rhythm offensively. And we were doing really well in the offensive glass in the first half, but it amounted to nothing because we couldn't
Just kept
either the big guy couldn't finish it to go straight back up, or we passed it back out,
and
took
missed
like an
another
okay
shot.
shot, and it still missed. And then LaSalle got the ball. So even on the offensive glass, I mean, I'm looking at the box score now. Out offensive rebounded them 20-12, and we have like nothing to show for it.
The three keys that we brought up going into this game, we moved on from rebounding. We no longer counted that as like a key characteristic whether we win or lose. The key characteristics were turning the ball over, shooting the three, and starting off the second half. How we started off the second half, and we started off flat as could be. Our lead went away in the first minute of the second half.
Yeah.
So we were able to build it back up for a few minutes, and then after that, it was as if we weren't even there. Defensively, I said in the first half, at the start of the first half, we were a disorganized mess. We tightened up once Reese got subbed out, and then that carried out through the first half. We played pretty solid defense after the first like 5 minutes or so. Second half, we were just a disheveled mess the entire half, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I talked about it. Trey Williams had to cover I think it was Brick. I don't know. I don't remember which guard. They both killed us. They had to cover him
on a switch. Yeah.
Yeah. And he ended up with a wide open three, but you leave Trey Williams covering him for 15 seconds on the perimeter. You got to try to be able to switch back or something. I mean, there's no expectation of success with any big covering a guard for that extended period of time.
Yeah, and I texted you back the same thing. For a while on that same possession, Brewer was down low guarding the big man in the post, and they finally switched out of that. But there was a while where I'm like, they're going to try and find that mismatch because it's a pretty big one. But
the rest would have called an anticipated foul anyway. So they.
In those situations, Brewer admittedly does foul because he has no other choice.
Right.
But yeah, I see what you mean. And speaking of Brewer, especially in the second half, I don't know. Did it feel like to you he was just kind of dribbling the air out of the ball a little bit too much? Like, I know he's obviously trying to facilitate, make the correct decision, but it felt like the ball was in his hands almost too much. Where guys like Trey Clark was heating up early in the set. Towards the end of the first half, early on in the second half, he hit back-to-back threes in the second half. I think
one from a mile away too.
Yeah. So he was starting to heat up. Day obviously carried us offensively in the first half. That was the only reason why we had a lead. He was the only guy who could score, and then it felt like Day and Clark for an extended period of time weren't involved in the offense at all.
Yep. Yeah, I just felt like the offense of flow towards the end of the first half was the flow that gets us going, where even if it's partially even if it's not in transition and we're just inbounding the ball, we're still moving with pace. We're moving the ball around quickly until we find an open look. That didn't really happen at all in the second half. It was more so just ISO ball, try and do the pick and rolls, and then those typically led into turnovers, honestly, or missed shots.
That's the thing when like Brewer running the pick and roll. I know he's good at making good decisions, but again, I bring it up constantly, but his size, he can't make the passes that Trey Clark and Day can make out of the pick and roll, or he doesn't have the speed and size to drive in and get contact like Trey Clark will. Day he has the speed. He just won't do it. There were a few occasions where I thought he had his man beat and could have drove to the rim and takes a mid-range shot instead. But, we're just picking out every single flaw that happened in this game at this point. And Brewer was like, okay, he had like a little floater game going. He had like 2 or 3 floaters. Like, he wasn't horrible, but it just felt like he had the ball in his hands too much when Trey Clark, he ended up with 27 points. It's wild.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Rotroff played really well in the first half.
He did, yeah.
See that. Second
did
half,
all the dirty work. 8 rebounds in this game.
Second half, he came in. It was kind of too little, too late when he came in. At least when I remember him coming in.
Well, he came in super early in the second half. It was like within the first 2 minutes, I remember.
Well, then he did really well during that stint because that was our bounce back time, and then we took him out, and then we put him back in after we were already down 10, and it was just like, well, what are we gonna do? So
also, just we haven't said his name. Let's just share the blame for everybody. Just box score wise, Trey Williams, 0 field goal attempts, 0 points, 2 rebounds. He had 2 blocks, but like
he had 2 early fouls too. That got him put on the bench for a little bit. And then,
I don't know if you can have 0 field goal attempts in a tournament game as a starter.
Well, I mean, we've gone into it, Alec. We shot a bunch of threes. It's not Trey's game. And the bigs that attacked sort of down low was Reese flinging shots and drawing some fouls, and then shooting 3 of 7 from the line. I don't know. Our free throw shooting has been atrocious all season. So,
well, it's only been atrocious because it's only Joe Reese and like Trey Williams who get to the line. Or any of our good free throw shooters, they don't get to the line enough.
Well, when you say any of our good free throw shooters, you mean Day?
Well, Trey Clark was 4-6 tonight, but yeah.
All right. Well, Trey Clark also started 0 for 2, and that was just another thing where it's just like, God, we suck at shooting free throws.
Yeah. It was bad.
McGriff, he wasn't able to provide the spark off the bench like he sometimes is able to, but that's also kind of not something that you can rely on. It's just like a nice bonus when it happens.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's like that really contributed to anything that happened tonight.
No,
I'd say RJ Gunn like his lack of contribution contributed.
Yeah.
And he, like I said, I liked the shot, especially in the first half. I love the shots that he was taking. He can make those shots. They're wide open, and he just missed. And there were, again, offensive rebounds that just weren't, there's just a lack of execution offensively and finishing off plays and possessions.
Yeah.
Because defensively, especially in the first half, it was great. 27 points let up. And then second half, you can't even really go by the numbers in the second half because the last 5 minutes was a free throw bonanza.
Yeah, and that really annoyed me, that how long the game was extended because of those foul calls too, which is another reason why I was annoyed that they were calling anticipated fouls, because it just made it so much worse.
Yeah, it made the bleeding, like they slowed down the bleeding, but it still really hurts.
The amount of time it took to get from 2 minutes left in the game to 1 minute left in the game was probably 10 minutes of real time.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I stopped. I was like prepping for this. I completely stopped watching after like 3 minutes, when there was 3 minutes left or something.
I left my parents' house at the minute mark because that's where I was watching the game away from my sleeping children, and I was glad that I made that decision. So
I'm also at my parents' house, but no one's here except my sister. So she was watching. She put her Duquesne sweatshirt on for this game. Like she was rooting for it, and she was like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "They had the lead, and then they blew it."
Yeah, my dad was excited for this one. Apparently, was talking to my mom about it all day.
Oh wow!
And then brutal game.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have
we're not doing a season recap this episode. I told you we need time to stay away from this and fully digest it, because right now this season's a failure, and it feels like the immediate reaction is this season feels worse than last season probably felt, because at least you didn't have any expectations going into the Atlantic 10 tournament, whereas this time you really did, and it just wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say one thing that we haven't talked about too much. They said on the broadcast, and again, one of the few highlights that the broadcast had, um, just one-on-one defense was pretty poor. Like our front three guys got beat, particularly Brewer, particularly RJ Gunn when he has to guard outside of the arc. Um, they just got beat way too easily, and it puts a lot of pressure on Williams or Reese to do anything down low. I know Williams has been excellent ever since he came back from his injury defensively, but can only put out so many fires.
Well, I will say this: the example that sticks out to me on help defense not being there was a drive by a guard on the right side of the paint, and RJ Gunn was like the big on that side. And instead of trying to step in and draw a charge or contest a shot, he just put his arm out to try and swipe the ball instead of being the big guy that he was. And that was just kind of the sign of, yeah, that's kind of what our defense has been like. They moved our bigs away from the paint, let the guards attack. And I will say this: there were times where our guards defended really well for about 25 seconds of the shot clock, and then there was either a bailout foul call or it was a bad shot, and then they probably got the offensive rebound in the second half, because that's just kind of how it felt, where there's a few times where the ball just went off of us when we were getting the rebound too in the second half. I think Dixon was one of those that I'm remembering.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything too bad when he came in. It was nice to see that he got. I will say this: it was a really nice confidence boost to see him get subbed in with like 6 minutes to go when we were down 10, because that's a moment where you're like, all right, I believe in that you can bring a spark to this team. Now he didn't stay in long. I think shortly after that, actually, play that I mentioned, he got subbed out. But it was at least good thought to try and get something going.
Yeah, and like when he first came out on the floor, in the first half, immediately got a steal off like a nice. Our two best defenders, it was Trey Clark, totally stopped the ball handler, and then David Dixon came up on the pass and forced a turnover there. So I was like, okay, a little bit more of this, Dixon, and we got something going. But yeah, it does make you at least excited that hopefully he starts, or I want him to start next year.
Yeah,
if he can make the improvements that he needs to improve on. But he was the first guy that stood out to me at the beginning of the season, and he's still a guy that really excites me going forward. So that's a preview into the the recap of the season and preview for next season. But
yeah, I will say this: based off of what we've been talking about, really feels like we just had a lot of kind of rotation mistakes this game, because the guys that were playing the best basketball on the floor did not get nearly enough minutes when it came to Rotroff, Dixon.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
It's tough. It's a tough line.
Brewer was bad because he was on the floor when they had the spark towards the end of the first half, but it. I mean, I told you, I don't know, three or 4 weeks into the non-conference schedule when you joined in, I feel like Brewer would be better off the bench as like the sixth man kind of guard, and that still feels like where his role would be best after the entire season's over and it's no longer an option to change minutes around. I do think he's better as a spark plug off the bench more so than a guy getting 30 minutes and having to cover somebody one-on-one for a decent part of the game, and especially clutch minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree and disagree. Like, that's probably true, but he's still gonna have those defensive limitations even off the bench.
Agreed. But if you're bringing him off the bench, you can kind of see who he's going to match up against, and his focus is go make things happen on offense.
That's the problem is with Brewer's lack of size, is that you can try and puzzle piece him to a different thing, like to a different part of the board to see if it fits better. But ultimately, that lack of size and just he's a total minus on defense. It's just always like going to be part of the game, no matter if he's off the bench or starting. But I see what you're saying, like especially with the way he can handle the ball and be a spark plug on offense and can get his own shot sometimes when he wants to shoot. Yeah, and the only thing is, I guess Rozier still needs to. Brewer still has the edge over Rozier, in my opinion, on facilitating the offense, knowing who needs their shot. And I know that kind of contradicts what I said earlier, where he was dribbling it too much, but I don't know. It's just hopefully we can get like a bigger point guard, really, is what it boils down to, who can do some similar things.
Yeah. I think Trey Clark's uncle or dad follows me on Twitter, and he tweeted out, better make Trey starting point guard next year. That would be interesting. Either Trey or Day Day as a starting point guard would be interesting, I think.
I see what he's saying, and so there's a difference between like having the ball, giving the guy the ball a lot on offense, and a point guard, because that's what I'm kind of trying to say in the second half of this game, is that I like when Day Day or Trey Clark have the ball in their hands in a pick and roll situation, especially Trey Clark, because he has that go to the basket speed.
Yeah.
And he's a sneaky good passer when he wants to be. Like he almost made those passes in the pick and roll in the first half, but like I said, he lacked the execution there. But I've seen him make those passes in season, and he's great at that dump off pass when he drives into the lane, which is an easy bucket when you can execute that well. So I see what he's saying, but I still think this team needs a true blue point guard to get the best out of all these guys. But I agree that he should have had the ball more in the second half, like handling the ball more.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, Trey Clark bringing to mind, there were like 3 or 4 plays where we could have had like awesome dunk and one opportunities.
Yeah.
His freakish athleticism being one of those, and then Rotroff having, I think, 1 or 2, and then
yeah,
I don't remember what the other big was. It must have been Reese, where it was like,
no, it was RJ Gunn. I remember because he missed a wide open put back off of Day miss. Yeah,
right.
I have that in my notes.
Yep. It was just like the highlight reel plays that we rely on. It doesn't even seem like we relied on them, but we're always part of like those wins this year. Definitely never happened this game. So
no, and I wrote this live in the first half because Trey Clark was struggling before. He was struggling for a good part offensively, at least in the first half, but then at the 4:21 mark was when he almost finished that putback.
Yeah.
And missed it. But I wrote down, I'm like, this is probably the spark that he needs, because he was this close to doing something super awesome that he's capable of doing, and he hasn't really done much in this game. I feel like that's going to give him some confidence, and then he shoots 9 of 14 from the field, 27 points, 5 of 8 from 3. I mean, some of those were garbage points, but
I mean, he was 3 or 4 from 3 when we were ahead still. So
yeah,
I don't give too many of those as garbage points.
No. Yeah, I'm acknowledging that there are some garbage points in there, but not majority. They are not. So yeah, I like Trey Clark a lot, and I like David Dixon a lot. I like this team. This team was good, but
you have an eye for talent.
I think any moron can talk in a microphone and see that if they watch this team.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we had so much talent this year, and the one thing I said that we needed to be great was that focus and mental just
sharpness,
mentally locking in.
Yeah,
and that clearly wasn't the case this game. Clearly
at
wasn't
least in the second half.
right. Clearly wasn't the case against Fordham. Like in all the losses, that has been the issue where we just haven't been locked in, and that leads to sloppy mistakes. It leads to frustration mistakes, and it leads to in both of those
At
things.
least to chucking up threes to try and come back.
Right. It leads to mistakes mounting on top of other mistakes, and it's just that's that's how this season ended the way it did. So
I guess last thing is Brantley and Brickus were good. Like they were good.
good, but
They like I'm not gonna this is a Duquesne podcast, so we're gonna talk 90% Duquesne, but those two guys did play good basketball.
yeah, but I mean we could have made adjustments to have
100%, 100%.
and that's our focal point is what could we have done better, and there's a lot of things that we could have done to make adjustments and we didn't. One person in A10 Twitter tweeted out, Duquesne, welcome to the CBI, and I don't want to watch this team play another game this year.
Oh no! Wow, you are really
where
down
I'm
bad.
at.
Wow,
Yeah.
you sound like me against the Fordham game.
Yeah. Well, I was slowly building myself back up into believing for the second Fordham, the third Fordham game.
Yeah,
That was my focal point, and then we got our hopes dashed even before then. And yeah, I don't want to see the same mistakes over and over again. I don't want this university to pay money to play more basketball games. Like that's what the CBI is. You pay your way to play more games. No, you got to earn it, and we did not. And man, I felt like that we definitely have the talent to be at least an NIT team this year. All we had to do was win a few more games.
I think overall, what you can honestly say is this team was definitely above average. They were definitely good. They were definitely fun to watch, but they 100% had their flaws.
Fun to
And
watch, but also frustrating to watch on the other end. Like,
right, and they had their flaws, and those flaws showed in these last two games. And all you can do is just try to improve those flaws next season while trying to keep some of the things that you built this season, the things that you're good at. And that's really all you can do. But hopefully LaSalle beats Fordham. We're temporarily a LaSalle podcast, I think.
I mean, we're an anybody but Fordham podcast in my mind at this
point. Okay, yeah, that works too. However you want to spin it.
I'm fine with VCU. I'm fine with Dayton, who I usually can't stand. I'm fine with.
So we're really just Fordham needs to lose in embarrassing fashion.
I mean, the more
whatever we'll take whatever way possible, but embarrassing would be
the more excruciating the better. But yeah, anything happen. Duquesne ends the conference season 10-9 with this loss, by the way. So we are basically a 500 Atlantic 10 team. So that also hurts because, like I've said for weeks, months maybe, we should have been a clear top 5 team in the conference based off of talent and watching the skill. And we end probably, like, if we added these last game results, 9th or 10th in the conference probably. That's pathetic.
I wouldn't say pathetic because this was I don't remember all the stats that people have been saying.
Yeah, they had
like an overall season. This is 20-win season hasn't happened like only the third time in 42 years or something.
Yeah.
Some crazy stats record wise for this team, and we haven't had a good season like this in a very long time. So that's something to hang our hat on. But like you said, yeah, 10-9 doesn't reflect how good this team could have been. But they had their flaws. They definitely had their flaws.
Right, and then it comes down to, I mean, the coaches are going to have to take a deep look into what went wrong, what they can do to be better next year, whether it's different players, which I don't think it is. I think the players, for the most part, is going to be good. It's going to suck losing Rotroff, Dixon, and hopefully Barre come back and are healthy and take that next step. Reese, I mean, I told you that Reese is like maybe applying for another year. I'm not sure if I like that or not, honestly. I think I'd rather just see Dixon and Barre kind of take the next step and see how they do. And then from a guard standpoint, Tevin Brewer's gone. Rozier's presumably going to be joining the starting rotation unless somebody else comes in off the transfer portal or another guard comes in.
I don't want to talk. I don't want to. I have things to say, but I'll save that for
the next pod.
The next podcast.
I'm just
don't
trying to find some sort of optimism to end this thing.
And I get you. All those things are true. I have things to say, but I don't want to give away all the entertainment in one podcast.
Yeah, but for now, folks, I'll leave you with how I promised. This sucks.
It sucks, but go Dukes, I guess.
I guess that's what it is. That's what it is.
Go Explorers. Boo Rams.
Go anybody but Fordham.
Yeah.
The Dukes are back and now it's time to rise up. Rise up.